Okay, so I'm going to continue to admit those joining us this morning. And as you can see, my face does not reflect Colleen McAleer, but unfortunately, Colleen was unable to join us this morning. So I am Lorie Fazio. I am the Business Relationship Manager here at our Clallam County EDC. And so I will be facilitating on her behalf this morning. And I, of course, would love to welcome all of you to the call this morning and our meeting as we continue with our housing series that we are having with our housing crisis that is going on. And as we have our housing experts join us to give us input and review on what is going on in our county as we move through the climate that we are currently in. So as I look to maybe a little bit of my notes as I move forward, please make sure to mute your phones as I can hear a little feedback. Mute your phones. Let me see if I can see anybody that's okay. Looks like maybe the caller that's called in on 0417 could mute, or I can go ahead and do that. I'll take care of that this morning. Thank you again for joining us with our chat this morning. I want to definitely welcome our guest this morning, which is Sarah Martinez. She is the Executive Director at the Peninsula Housing Authority, and she's going to talk to us this morning on what the PHA has to offer in service to Clallam County. So I'm going to go ahead and have her go ahead and unmute herself and let me know whenever she wants me to share her screen. So, or her PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Sarah, and the floor is yours.
Lorie, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and share a little bit about what the PHA does. And so if you want to go ahead and put the PowerPoint up, that would be great. Will help me to stay on track and keep the discussion going, and then have some opportunity for questions and answer at the end.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So I wanted to put some contents together and talk just a little bit about a brief history of the PHA so that those that have joined today can understand how PHAs are formed and really what our role is. I think we get often confused with other nonprofits, and we are not a nonprofit. I want to talk a little bit about the programs we offer and our assets, and then really get into some specifics about the Section 8 and the Mutual Self-Help Program. Colleen asked me to specifically speak about those programs. And then talk a little bit about our future plans, what we have on our strategic long-term plans, and then Colleen asked me some very specific questions that I want to take some time to answer to, and then an opportunity for anybody else to ask questions. So next slide, please. So history of the Housing Authority. The Housing Act of 1937 allowed for subsidies to be paid from the federal government to local public housing authorities to improve conditions for low-income families. And so around 1939, the state of Washington created public housing authorities under the RCW 35.82. They are a public body, corporate and politic. And really what that means is the housing authority is a special purpose government. We are not we're not a state agency, we're not a county agency. We are kind of a quasi-municipality that was really specifically created when our county saw the need to have a body that would help affordable housing in Clallam County. And so originally, the Housing Authority of Clallam County was formed in 1941 And in 2010, we merged with the Jefferson County Housing Authority to become the Peninsula Housing Authority. So our jurisdiction covers 2 counties, and we have an 8-member board that is appointed by county commissioners. So I have 5 commissioners from Clallam County and 3 commissioners from Jefferson County, and they are a fiscal and policy board that manage policies of the PHA and ensure fiscal responsibility. So our programs, we currently have a variety of programs. Probably our most robust program is our Section 8 housing program, which covers housing choice voucher and also project-based rental assistance contracts. We also have several, as I like to call them, boutique voucher programs. And these are programs that are really specifically defined in the federal regulation, such as Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing. So those are our VASH vouchers. Those are specific vouchers. We receive referrals from the VA to assist veterans. We also have non-elderly disabled vouchers, which we call NED. And I will preface that in the world of federal programs, we have lots of acronyms. So there's something that somebody wants explanation on that I haven't caught in here, please stop me and let me know. So non-elderly disabled, those are specific vouchers that come through referrals through DSHS and the state for folks that are exiting long-term care or institutionalization who are not elderly. We also have a family unification program, which are vouchers that are specific for referrals that come through CPS. So these would be cases that are being managed through our local CPS, and housing is preventing them from having their children back in the household. And so this is an opportunity to receive a subsidy to find housing. And then recently added, we have emergency housing vouchers, and these actually came out of the CARES Act. And these are vouchers that are specific for folks who are experiencing homelessness, at risk of homelessness, who are not on our normal Section 8 wait list. So we have partnered with OLECAP in Jefferson County, as they are the COC, which is Continuum of Care representative. So they receive funding specifically from the state of Washington to run what's called coordinated entry. Coordinated entry is a system that allows people who are experiencing homelessness to come to one place and get hooked up with all the services that they might need to find housing, obtain things that they may be missing, like their driver's license or a birth certificate, and help them get back on their feet. So we do have those vouchers. We received 19 of those and are working with OLECAP to receive the first referrals for that program. We also have Section 515 housing, which is through USDA Rural Development. That is a affordable mortgage program for a property owner, but also provides subsidy to the property. That's a fully subsidized program. We also have what's called HUD 8, Section 811, which is a specific subsidy that typically serves a special needs population, either disabled, homeless, or chronically mentally ill. We have several projects that have low-income housing tax credits. That is a capital funding mechanism that the federal government created in the 80s to try to move affordable housing out into the private market. So an investor comes in, they partner with an agency, the investor provides what's called tax credits in the form of capital for either construction or rehabilitation, and in turn is granted tax credits through the IRS for their corporate income taxes. We also have tenant-based rental assistance. This is a temporary 2-year program for folks that are coming out of homelessness. This is a state-based program, so we manage the funds for those referrals have to come through coordinated entry, which would be either Serenity House or Holy Cap. The Mutual Self-Help Housing Program, which is a homeownership program through USDA Rural Development that allows a low-income family to obtain a subsidized loan. And then through that subsidized loan, the Housing Authority has a grant that assists families in building their home. And so we do groups of 8 to 10, and I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about that program later on. We also have some home program funds. HOME stands for Housing Opportunities Made Easier. This is a federal program. We are a sub-grantee through the state of Washington. This program provides capital for construction of affordable housing. And then we have HUD multifamily rental assistance contracts, which come through a different arm of HUD. And that's a subsidized product. We have one project out in Forks that has that type of contract in it. Do you want me to take a break for questions or keep going, Lorie? What's your?
We'll just go ahead, and if anyone does have a question when you break per slide, then they can just go ahead and let me know in the chat that they'd like to ask a question, and we can go ahead and have a Q&A throughout, or we can wait till the very end. So if anyone on the call has a question for Sarah, please enter in the chat that you'd like to ask a question, and then I will facilitate that over to you. Okay, Sarah?
Perfect. Just quickly, the assets the PHA owns. We have 96 units in 4 separate properties in Forks, 421 rental units in 6 properties in Port Angeles, 40 units in 1 property in Port Hadlock. And then we also have undeveloped land in Port Angeles and Port Townsend for future mutual self-help builds.
So we'll go ahead and call on Caleb he has a question.
Sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. Earlier, when you were talking about the tax credits that were being issued by HUD, that came about in the 80s to help move that into the private market, I was curious, can the investors take those tax credits and monetize them, aka sell them?
As I understand it, the credits, the equity in the project can be transferred from investor to investor, meaning that typically when we do a tax credit project, we enter into a limited liability, limited partnership contract. And so in that partnership agreement, there are opportunities for the investing partner, which is usually the limited partner, to sell or transfer its equity in the project to another investor. And they could reap the benefit, that new investor could reap the benefit of those credits. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
So next slide. Thank you, Lorie. So Lorie and Colleen had asked me to talk specifically about the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program. And so I wanted to provide a few more specifics about it because it is our most robust program that we administer. Housing Choice Voucher is a federally subsidized program. So this is a program that receives direct allocation from Congress to HUD. And then once those funds reach HUD, HUD has many, many formulas on how funds are dispersed to states and then subsequently dispersed to housing authorities. So a few quick things. A lot of times you'll hear Housing Choice Voucher Program talked about as the housing authority has a certain number of vouchers, and that is a true statement. We have what's called an annual contributions contract. meaning that HUD has said, I can issue a particular number of vouchers to participants in my jurisdiction. But the bigger concept to understand with Section 8 vouchers is that they are really a budget line item. So I might have 600 vouchers, but if my budget does not allow me, the rents that I am paying on behalf of clients in the community are high, and I'm using my full budget capacity, I may not be able to issue all of those vouchers. So I think the important thing to remember is that Housing Choice Voucher Program is really a budget line item in my budget. I have a budget capacity that I have to manage every year. And it's not necessarily so important to know about the number of vouchers. So a few things about the program. We assist those that are considered very low income, which is below 50% of area median income. And the program allows them to rent decent, safe, and sanitary housing in the private market. So this is a program that utilizes private landlords very, very heavily. We rely heavily on our landlord partners in the community. And so a housing participant, once determined eligible, is free to choose housing that meets the requirements of the program. And so the requirements of the program, there's many, but just quickly for some specifics, it has to meet the housing quality standards inspection. So we are inspecting housing prior to somebody leasing up to ensure that it's safe and sanitary. There also are requirements with the amount of rent that somebody can pay. There are requirements with the type of housing that it can be. And so we look to make sure that we're in compliance with those requirements. And so we administer this HCV program, and then once a participant is issued a voucher, they are responsible for finding suitable housing. So we give them what's called a briefing. They understand how the program works, and then they're free to go out into the rental market and find housing. They are armed with the total amount that the rent can be, and all of the requirements for particular housing. And so the housing subsidy is paid directly to the landlord from the PHA, and the client pays the difference between the actual rent and the amount subsidized. And under most circumstances, that amount is going to be 30% of that particular household's annual adjusted income divided by 12. So, and I will talk a little bit more when we talk about some questions later on about how the rental market is being impacted right now and the cost of rent for my clients. We also have a Section 8 homeownership program where the subsidy can be paid towards a mortgage. And we have about 23 people who live in Clallam County who have a mortgage where the Housing Authority pays a portion of their mortgage through the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So the Housing Choice Voucher Program is a waitlist program. We open our waitlist every 12 to 18 months as needed to replenish the list. Typically, applications are accepted for a 1-week period. We take in applications for a 1-week period, we advertise heavily, we communicate very thoroughly with our partner agencies to know that we're getting ready to open the wait list. And then we have a randomized lottery to pick about 200 people to be added to the list. Historically, when we would open the wait list, we would take every person that applied and add them to the list. And what we were finding is that it was taking us 3 to 5 years to exhaust that list. And people were waiting on the wait list for that long. And so we've gone to this lottery system, which allows us to replenish that list every 12 to 18 months. So we can move through the list a little bit quicker and hopefully serve people a little bit more efficiently in the community. And so we do administer Section 8 in both counties, and we manage one wait list. So if you apply for Section 8 and you're added to the wait list, you have the ability to lease up in either county. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. I went ahead and added just the basic income limits for Section 8 so that you could have a better understanding of what 50% of area median income looked like. So if you were a household of 4 people, you could not make more than $35,300 annually to be eligible for Section 8 subsidies. So you can see that we're serving low-income folks with our Section 8 program. The program does allow you to exceed that 50% area median income once you have become eligible and been on the program for a period of time. And so we will adjust the rent payment that the client makes depending on their income. So they report to us when they have a change of income up or down, and we will adjust their income to make sure that it's around that 30% mark. Any questions about Section 8? Okay, so mutual self-help building program. This is a really exciting program that the Housing Authority administers. So this is a grant-based program through the U.S. Department of Agriculture Rural Development. And so organizations, housing authorities, nonprofits typically assist low-income households to build their own homes in rural communities. So this is a rural program only. This program is not available in larger communities that are considered urban. And so income for the program cannot exceed $56,500 annually for a household of 4 or less. And if you have a household of 5 or more, you can't exceed $74,600. And so the PHA provides technical assistance to a group of individuals who want to qualify to build a home in preparation of loan applications. We help them with land purchase. We provide house plans, materials management, and step-by-step construction supervision and instruction. The financing is 100% construction to permanent financing through USDA RD. And the payments are subsidized based on the individual's income. And the terms range from 33 to 38 years. We do groups of 8 to 10 houses at a time. We find that anything less than 8 starts to become a little less efficient and a little harder on the group. We've done smaller groups before when necessary, but we like a group of 8 to 10. Participants contribute 32 hours a week to the construction of their homes, of which 16 of those can be by volunteers. So they really learn a lot of valuable skills. They learn framing, they learn finish work, they learn how to hang cabinets, they learn how to install flooring, they do roofing. We subcontract out major trades, so plumbing, electrical, flat work, drywall, things of that nature. They do a lot of painting. They put all the siding on their own homes. And so over the course of about 12 months, these folks are working together, doing something that's very difficult, but very rewarding at the same time. So we have completed about 125 single-family homes in Jefferson and Clallam County since we started mutual self-help back in around 2005.
Sarah, with the cost of building supplies right now, do you have any construction currently going on in our market?
So we have two groups going on. We have a group currently in Port Angeles that has really passed the need for materials. They are at the very end of their build. We're finishing up exterior dirt work and things of that nature. They did not see as a significant of an impact during this time because of the construction material costs. But we do have a group in Forks that we have actually stopped work on because of the cost of materials. And so materials are starting to come down, and we're formulating a plan to help that group get going again.
So is there any type of waiting list for this program currently?
There is a waiting list. We have an application process. We have an employee that works for the PHA that specifically works with our self-help clients. And so you can either go to our website or call our main number and receive an application for this program.
Okay, thank you.
So future plans, expansion of housing units. This is something that we are always talking about at the PHA is how can we increase housing in the community? And so I want to talk quickly about what we have currently going and hopefully what we see in the future. So currently we are rehabilitating 218 affordable units in 4 existing buildings in Port Angeles. These are 4 buildings that the PHA has owned for a number of years. And rehabilitation ensures the preservation of units and ensures the affordability. So this is a significant project for us, 218 units of occupied rehab. So I will throw that in there. So we're working to temporarily relocate our residents while we get in and do some updates in their units, new cabinets, new floors, new countertops, updated efficient lighting, plumbing replacements, and doing some work to building exteriors to keep them upright and standing for another 50 years. So big project going on right now. We will have continuation of our mutual self-help program. Our goal is to build about 8 to 10 houses per year. So we're always looking for land to purchase as part of that program. We purchase land and then do any subdivisions or development infrastructure that needs to be done. And then we turn around and sell those lots to our participants in the mutual self-help program. And so the other thing that is significant in expansion of housing units for the PHA is that the complete redevelopment of Mount Angeles View. Mount Angeles View is located up off Florissant Boulevard. It's where our main office is. We have about 18 acres up here. And originally we had 100 affordable units. This is an old public housing site. Public housing is a specific HUD program that we actually just got out of. And so we have done one phase, which is our Sea Ridge property. That was a new construction project that happened in 2018 and 2019, where we removed 33 units that were built in the 40s and built 63 brand new units. We have 2 subsequent phases that would take the total amount of units from 100 to 232. And so we are hoping to submit some applications for capital probably at the end of 2022 as we get to a point where we're wrapping up the occupied rehab project. And then we also have some land that we own out on East 7th Avenue in the county, where we have done a self-help build out there. And we also did a small 13-unit building called Eklund Heights. But we have another section of that land that we would like to subdivide and put a single building with 25 one-bedrooms on it. And Annie O'Rourke, who is the PHA's Director of Acquisition and Development, and I have been doing some research into modular construction, and are very curious about how we can make a modular project work with this particular type of housing. And so more to come on that. That is in our pipeline. We're starting some pre-development on that. So quickly, just to talk briefly about some questions that Colleen had asked me to cover. So with the eviction moratorium expiring October 1st, do you anticipate rents to increase across the board for PHA properties or privately owned Clallam County multifamily properties? And so I take this in two parts. Rents to increase across the board for PHA properties. So almost all of our properties have subsidy associated with them, meaning that through the entire moratorium, we were allowed, because of programmatic rules, that if anybody's income changed, we would adjust rent up and down as necessary for program compliance. So our rents are restricted by funders, meaning that if we're going to ask for a rent increase, it typically is going to come in the form of subsidy from that funder. There's not a lot of rent increase that we pass along to our residents typically. We have a few projects that don't have subsidies in them, and through the pandemic, we haven't really felt the crunch of a rent moratorium and not being able, folks not being able to pay rent. We've had very few people that have not paid their rent. We have worked very closely with our residents, and so at this point, I don't feel rent increase at any of our properties is necessary for our operations. We always look at our rents annually when we do budgets, and we'll continue to do so. On the other hand, we have seen some pretty significant rent increases coming from private landlords out in the community. Those increases have ranged from $50 to about $300 a month, mostly affecting our Section 8 clients. And so there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on real brief here without getting too deep in the weeds. Section 8 has what's called a payment standard, and the payment standard is the maximum amount of rent or the maximum amount of assistance that a household can receive, meaning the total amount of assistance can't exceed what the payment standard is for that bedroom size in our particular county. So for example, a 2-bedroom in Clallam County, the current payment standard is $1,139, meaning that the total amount of assistance can't exceed that. If we have a current participant who receives a rent increase, and the rent increase puts the total amount of assistance over the payment standard, that participant has to pick up the difference, meaning that we are seeing some of our clients experiencing some pretty significant rent increases. And I fully understand that landlords have to raise rent in order to keep up with the expenses of being a landlord, property taxes and maintenance and those types of things. And so we are hopeful that the payment standards are going to increase in our county. The payment standards are based on fair market rents. Those rents will get published and become approved at our next board meeting. We are seeing an increase, so that will hopefully provide some relief to our clients. So that covers rent increases. So will renters be unable to find adequate housing? This is the $1 million question. there is not, we are working with a 0% vacancy rate in Clallam and Jefferson County right now. There is not a lot of housing available out there for people who have low income and maybe have a voucher, and for people who have higher income. I mean, I think across the board, we're really just seeing one, not a lot of turnover in the rental market because of the eviction moratorium. We're very stagnant. People are staying put. And so we've lost that natural cycle that we typically see with housing. People, you know, moving on, making changes, things of that nature. And so, yes, it's going to be hard for people to find housing. It's going to continue to be hard for people to find housing, especially adequate housing. That's why we're going to continue to offer the programs that we can, work on expanding housing in the community. What are the biggest barriers that you see for solving our housing crisis in Clallam County? That's a big question. I think there's a lot of variables that play into saying we've solved a housing crisis. I think we're working through our barriers right now. A couple of the biggest barriers that I see are lack of subsidy. So I only have so much subsidy that is afforded to me as a PHA, meaning that I get this budget capacity for Section 8. I have these subsidized programs that we've had in place for years. Most of these federally subsidized programs do not have a lot of opportunity for expansion, or if they do, it's very, very difficult to get because it's highly sought after. And so lack of subsidy is a big barrier. And when you rent to low income populations, the rents have to remain low. When the rents are low, you don't earn enough money to operate something efficiently, to pay staff, to pay for, the electricity and the maintenance costs. And so that subsidy helps fill the gap between what the expenses of a particular project are and the actual income that it's bringing in. So when we talk about serving very low or low income individuals, subsidy is an important part of that. Some of the other big barriers are lack of capital for new construction, and also the cost of construction is a barrier. We have some pretty significant building code changes that are coming from the state of Washington, particularly surrounding energy code. Stormwater is another expensive and contentious barrier because it's very expensive to put stormwater systems in. For example, Mount Angeles View, phase 1, so Sea Ridge, we had our total infrastructure budget was about $2.2 million, which included streets, sidewalks, relocation of plumbing, new electrical, those types of things. But about $850,000 of that was solely stormwater. So it's expensive. It's expensive to build in our county. It's expensive to build in our state. So we're always looking for outside of the box ideas on how we can mitigate some of those expenses or come up with creative ideas that still meet code requirements that maybe cost a little bit less money. So I think we're going to continue to work in partnership with our local municipalities, the city and the county, to help develop affordable housing, and also our other partner agencies that want to see more housing built. So with that, I wanted to have some opportunity for questions and discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Sarah, Rick Dickinson from CIE has a question. Has there been any discussion of community housing trusts? And would there be a role for you if one was formed?
So are you talking specifically about land trust, where the land would remain in trust?
Rick,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and let you.
Yeah, that's where the land and homes would remain in trust.
So we have had some dialogue in the past. Homeward Bound was community land trust that it was in Jefferson and Clallam County, and they still exist. They're doing a lot more work in Jefferson County right now, I think, than they are in Clallam, but they do own some land here in Clallam County. We have looked at trust models for our mutual self-help bill. And I know it has been successful in other parts of the country. And so I think our role would be kind of being that liaison between what programs we felt there was opportunity in and working with that land trust agency.
Thank you, Sarah. It looks like Caleb has a question.
Hi, Sarah. Just real quick question. When you talk about getting creative, has anybody looked at just the possibility? If I say look, I guess my question is it possible? Is there anything under the Housing Authority that would keep you from taking different governmental funds? So let's say, for example, like USDA 0% loans and stacking those with HUD money, and then stacking that with, for example, new market tax credits aren't usually meant for housing, but at the same time, you can kind of wiggle some in if you're in a really distressed area and the need's there. So like those type of capital stacks, have people looked at that, or, you know?
So, that's a good question, Caleb. And so typically, when you utilize low-income housing tax credits, you're looking at some pretty stacked capital. You're not just relying solely on the tax credit capital. So for example, Sea Ridge, which we built, which is a low-income housing tax credit project, it has tax credits in it. It has housing trust fund dollars in it. It has CDBG funds in it. There's some 2060 funds that came from the county. And there's also some opportunity funds that came from the county. And so when you look at that project as a whole, yeah, we've got some pretty significantly stacked capital. And each one of those requirements, each one of those capital contributors has its own set of compliance requirements. So the more types of funding you put into a project, the more complex and difficult it becomes to manage compliance for that compliance period. And so we have to take a look at what risk may be involved with layering financing in that could create opportunity for non-compliance. Does that make sense? So you have one organization that says you can't lease to anybody less than 60% of AMI, but then you bring in another layer of funding that says, well, 50% of those units have to be 30% or below, and you've added this other complexity for compliance. So while we do look at stacking capital, we have to be really careful about how complex the projects get.
Yeah, I get it. That answered my question. I was curious if it was possible. Sounds like it is just cumbersome, but thank you.
Sarah, looks like we have another question from Norma. Is there any way for private developers who are interested in building affordable housing to access tax credits?
Yes. So there are, the Washington State Housing Finance Commission is the tax credit agency in the state of Washington. They have funding cycles. It is a very, very competitive program. And so they have an application process annually, and do not have to be a nonprofit or a special purpose government to apply. You can be a private for-profit developer and apply for tax credits.
Nathan, it looks like you had something to add there.
I was just responding to Norma's question relative to the city of Port Angeles and that we have established a multifamily tax credit, which equates to no property tax for 12 years if you're doing affordable housing, and it's a multifamily development, or 8 years of no property tax if it is a multifamily, just general housing.
Thank you, Nathan. Are there any other questions this morning for Sarah? Well, we really want to thank Sarah for being on our call, being our guest, speaker, to share with us the resources and the programs that PHA has in our local communities, and assistance that they provide. And so I just want to thank you again, Sarah, and I want to thank everyone for allowing me to facilitate the call. We really appreciate you joining this morning. I do want to just give John Ralston just a brief 1 to 2 minutes. He wanted to share something this morning to give a brief update. And so, John, you have the floor, and thank you again, Sarah. If anyone has questions for Sarah, she can be reached at PHA, and you guys can review any of the programs or assistance that they have on their website.
Am I up?
You're up.
Great. Well, I was also going to say I've never met Sarah, but I've worked with the PHA, but I've worked with Annie for a number of years, and I've been fortunate to supply the land for the housing authorities self-help programs for 3 of their 4 past projects. So again, I want to thank the EDC for the continued hosting of these meetings, and I wanted to go over some items on a piece of land that, again, I'm fortunate to own, and we have a prospectus built on it, which, if you want to contact the EDC, we can get it to you on that basis. So it's a 5.3 acre parcel at the southeast corner of 8th and I in Port Angeles. So it's just west of the Park Villa Assisted Living facility. It's out towards Shane Park, across both 8th Street bridges. So at 5.3 acres, it's larger than the Safeway site that's by the Clallam County Courthouse. It's also larger than the former Albertson site that's up by Jefferson School. It's zoned commercial shopping district, so it can be mixed use. You can have apartments in there. You could have a C-store in there. You could have daycare in there. It's level terrain. There's utilities at or near the entire site. It's paved on 2.5 sides, and there's also a graveled alley. It's 2 blocks away from Hamilton School. It's 7 blocks away from Stevens Middle School. And of course, it's 2 blocks away from Shane Park. It's on a regular Clallam County transit route. It's had support. The city of Port Angeles is aware of the project. Colleen with the EDC is aware of the project. And we have both support from the city and from the Clallam County EDC for any type of development on that site. It's a little bit different than the density of, you might think of an apartment location where you can maximize construction. in the city of Port Angeles, high density for apartments is 40 units to an acre. So if you want to think, well, on our property being 5 acres, you could put 200 units there. But there is no density or a number per acre limitation. So in theory, you could put 300, you could put 400. The issue is, will it fit on the property? Might you have to build higher? What kind of relief you could get for parking, et cetera, et cetera. We are offering the property at 1.8 million, and be happy to answer any brief questions now, or if you want to funnel them back through the EDC, be happy to get back in touch with you. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Really appreciate you cascading that information to the group on the chat this morning.
Yep.
Once again, Sarah, great to have you on the call. Great to have everyone on the call. On behalf of Colleen and our team at the EDC, Peggy's on the call this morning also. It's great to see everyone. We will continue the housing series. Next week, we will be having Habitat for Humanity. Colleen Robinson, the executive director, will be our guest speaker on our chat and coffee with Colleen. Thank you again. And if you have anything that you would like to share or need assistance or provide information, please make sure to go to Choose Clallam First and or clallam.org to reach out to the Clallam County EDC. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, Lorie. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.